May 1945. The spring air over northern Germany carries the faint scent of pine from the surrounding forests. Mingled with the lingering smoke of distant fires and the sharp tents of liberation, in the shadowed grounds of what was once Ravensbrück, concentration camp, near the serene waters of Lake Schwedt. A group of emaciated women, their striped uniforms hanging loosely on skeletal frames, gather in small clusters. Their eyes, hollow from years of starvation and despair, widen as American soldiers from advancing Allied units, having crossed paths with survivors evacuated earlier by the Swedish Red Cross, distribute rations from their field kitchens. Among the simple treats passed hand to hand is ice cream cold, creamy scoops melting quickly in the warming sun, a luxury unimaginable in the hell they have endured. This moment, fragile and profound, marks not merely the end of captivity but the dawn of a reclaimed humanity for the women of Ravensbrück. Established in 1939 as the largest concentration camp exclusively for women under the Nazi regime, Ravensbrück stood as a grim monument to ideological cruelty. Located some 50 miles north of Berlin in a picturesque yet isolated region. Over 6 years, between 130,000 and 132,000 female prisoners from more than 30 nationalities passed through its gates. Political resistors, Jehovah's Witnesses, Roma, those deemed asocial, and increasingly Jewish women. Designed initially for 6,000 inmates, the camp swelled to house tens of thousands, with satellite subcamps stretching across the Reich for forced labor in armaments and agriculture. Conditions deteriorated relentlessly. Overcrowding bred disease, meager rations of watery soup and moldy bread led to widespread starvation, and systematic brutality claimed lives through beatings, medical experiments, and, from early 1945, makeshift gas chamber that murdered thousands. By January 1945, over 45,000 women and 5,000 men languished in the main camp and its subcamps. As Soviet forces advanced from the east, the SS orchestrated frantic evacuations. In late April, Commandant Fritz Suran forced more than 20,000 prisoners on death marches northwest, while handing several hundred, mostly French women, to the Swedish and Danish Red Cross in a desperate bid to negotiate favor. The main camp fell to the Red Army on April 30th, 1945, revealing fewer than 3,500 gravely ill survivors amid the barracks. Thousands more scattered on marches or rescued via neutral interventions encountered Western Allied forces in the chaotic final days. U.S. Army units, pushing through Germany, aided displaced persons and liberated stragglers, distributing emergency supplies that included preserved treats, symbolizing normalcy. For these women, long deprived of sustenance beyond survival scraps, the expectation upon liberation was grim. Perhaps continued hardship, suspicion from liberators, or the void of lost families. Many had braced for indifference or worse, recalling whispers of camps where freedom brought new horrors. Instead, they encountered acts of unexpected kindness, soldiers sharing cigarettes, chocolate, and yes, ice cream from mobile canteens or stockpiles meant for troops. The cold sweetness on parched tongues evoked childhood memories long suppressed, stark contrast to the deliberate famine imposed by their captors. Documented survivor accounts, though sparse on this precise indulgence due to the camp's primary Soviet liberation, echo themes of profound shock at abundant food from Western forces, cans of rich milk, fresh bread, and frozen desserts that represented not just calories, but compassion. Historical records substantiate the scale of suffering. Encyclopedia Britannica estimates 50,000 deaths from disease, starvation, and despair alone, with additional thousands executed or gassed. Polish women, subjected to horrific surgical experiments on bones and muscles, bore permanent scars. French resistor Germaine Tillion, in her 1975 eyewitness memoir, described the relentless hunger that drove prisoners to fantasize about feasts, even compiling secret recipe books to combat despair. One such collection, penned by survivor Rebecca, Teilbaum detailed lavish meals, whipped cream, cakes, fruits, as a defiant act against emptiness. Gemma LaGuardia Gluck, sister of New York's mayor, recounted in her writings the psychological torment of rationed crumbs amid plenty stolen by guards, yet in those post-liberation encounters with American troops, the reality shattered expectations. Women who had shared meager portions to sustain one another now held each other as they tasted ice cream, tears streaming down gaunt cheeks. The act of clinging together, arms linked, heads bowed, reflected bonds forged in adversity. Camp. Sisters who had adopted orphans shared stolen potato peels or whispered encouragement during roll calls in biting cold. This physical closeness, born of necessity in barracks, where warmth came only from huddled bodies, transformed in freedom into a celebration of survival. The sweetness dissolved bitterness momentarily, reminding them of a world beyond barbed wire. Ice cream, that simple confection of cream, sugar, and vanilla, recurs in Allied liberation narratives as a symbol of American abundance, a product of industrial plenty, mass produced and preserved for soldiers far from home. In the Pacific Theater, the U.S. Navy even commissioned a concrete barge to churn out gallons for troops, underscoring a democracy's capacity to indulge even in war. For the Ravensbrook women, it embodied generosity without demand, a taste of freedom's promise, plenty shared freely, evoking the democratic ideal that no one need starve while others hoard. This encounter profoundly altered perceptions. Women who had internalized Nazi ideology's dehumanization, labeled subhuman, worked to exhaustion, reclaimed dignity through these gestures. Ideology that justified their torment crumbled against evidence of humanity's resilience. Survivors, like those interviewed decades later, spoke of renewed faith in goodness, a shift from despair to determination. The embrace shared over melting scoops reinforced sisterhood, turning individual trauma into collective strength. In the quiet aftermath, as emaciated figures sat together under open skies, savoring the chill on their lips, a larger truth emerged. Ice cream, fleeting and perishable, mirrored the fragility of life, yet its enduring sweetness. It linked personal redemption to broader ideals. Freedom's essence lies not in grand declarations, but in shared abundance, in the choice to extend comfort amid ruin. From the ashes of Ravensbrück rose a testament that even in ideology's darkest grip, human connection and simple kindness affirm the triumph of light over shadow, reminding generations that true liberation nourishes both body and soul.